Welcome to Man in America. I'm your host, Seth Holhouse. Thank you for joining me today. We've got some important topics to cover today. So, it's no secret that big corporations have become tools of the radical left. Think of big tech censorship, Nike glorifying the athletes that disrespect our national anthem, and airlines refusing passengers because they were in DC on January 6th. Now, it feels like these attacks are coming from all angles, yet they're extremely well organized and well coordinated, while for us, we're scattered, disorganized, and really stuck playing defense. But this is all changing. Over the weekend, President Trump called upon us to boycott the companies that are undermining our sacred elections. He said once again, America would not become a socialist nation, and has asked us to never give up and never submit. And around the world, people are refusing to give up, and they're refusing to submit. From a Polish pastor in Canada that literally kicked the police out of his church to an entire new movement in Europe called Make Europe Great Again. So all this and more we're going to cover on today's show. But I first want to ask everyone, how was your weekend? How was this glorious Easter weekend? For us, it was wonderful time with family, in prayer, really just being thankful for everything that we have. I hope everyone had a wonderful weekend. And secondly, where's everyone joining us from? I see we've got Jennifer from Australia. Gosh, my wife is an Aussie. I hope that we can go there one day. They've really cracked down on travel, unfortunately. So we want to bring our daughter there and see her family. Homesick for Hills, I see you're from Kentucky. Thank you for your service in the Army. Kim, Easter weekend was full of hope. Great. Thank you. So good. Jane Doe, good morning from San Francisco. Joel from Austin, Texas. Great. Thank you for joining us. Abbott just put into order a really important order about the passports, the vaccine passports, which is some news we'll cover. Not today's show, but in a later show. Wisconsin, Northern Kentucky, Virginia, Berkeley, California. Is that one of the homes of free speech? Mr. Charlie Varick, good to see you from Pennsylvania. John from UK. Thank you for joining us from UK. Pittsburgh, Alabama, Arkansas. Great. Everyone, thank you. Thank you so much for joining. I always feel so blessed to have everyone here. I feel like I'm just speaking to family, and that really we're all in this together. So we're going to jump into things. And I first want to talk about the big topic right now, which is what's happening with the MLB, Major League Baseball. And to start with this, though, I want to look at it from a different angle. And I'm going to read a little bit from an Epoch Times article, who they do a fantastic job of really making some strong ties to what's happening with MLB in China and how that's most likely affecting what's happening with them here. So I'm going to pull up this article right here. Okay, so this is very interesting. How the MLB boycotted Georgia a day after expanding a China deal. Okay, so let's give this a read. So Major League Baseball had extended and expanded its contract with a Chinese telecommunications giant shortly before boycotting the state of Georgia over the league's disagreement with the election reforms recently enacted by the Peach State's democratically elected governor and legislature. Chinese state media reported on April 1st, this is one day before the boycott from them, that the MLB will continue to be aired on the streaming platform operated by the Chinese tech giant Tencent, which has significant ties to the Chinese Communist Party. So just so you know, really any big company in China, and this is because it's communist, is how it works there. Any company that gets big enough eventually gets pulled under the control of the Chinese Communist Party. They don't allow large groups of any kind of power outside of their control, right? So now Tencent is one of the Chinese companies that had temporarily dropped NBA games as a form of censorship, if you remember this happening last year, after former uh, Houston Rockets general manager Daryl Morey spoke out in support of the pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong. So on April 2nd, the day after the announcement of the Chinese deal, the MLB moved its semi-annual All-Star game out of Atlanta, Georgia, in response to a set of election reforms signed by the Governor Brian Kemp last month. Now, the MLB commissioner, Robert Manfred, said in a statement that the move would, quote, demonstrate our values as a sport. Now, when the Epoch Times reached out, funny enough, the league did not respond to an emailed request to confirm the details of the Chinese deal and a question on how continuing business with China demonstrates its values, considering the recent U.S. recognition of a genocide being carried out by the CCP against the Uyghur Muslims. The CCP is responsible for an estimated 100 million unnatural deaths since taking power in China in 1949. Okay, so this is really, really important here for a lot of reasons. For one, what are the values that the MLB speaks of? And this is a very important point, because they talk about their values, but you have to look, is it values or is it agenda? Okay, and because values are universal, right? If you value free speech or you value human rights, right? So if they're talking about valuing their democracy, which is one of the things they're talking about, okay, yet they're inking a deal with the Chinese Communist Party, who is brutalizing its citizen. It's killed millions, close to 100 million of its own citizens. It's completely destroying democracy in Hong Kong since it's taken over in 97 from the British. It's been a slow decline. I used to travel to Hong Kong a lot for business and almost moved there at one point. And I can tell you that in 2010, for instance, it was a very different place than even what it's been the past couple of years. So you have to ask yourself, what are the values that they're standing for? Okay. The other thing to take note of, they're saying a lot of this is racially motivated with the MLB to protect the racist voting laws. Okay, so they've announced that they're relocating the All-Star game to Colorado, which actually has much more strict voting laws than Georgia. And it's actually a much more white state than Georgia. And so what are their actual values here, right? So, or is it the agenda, okay? And the agenda to undermine the election integrity. And again, this is what we're seeing. We're seeing these big corporations, as I mentioned in the introduction, being used as tools just to push forth this radical agenda, right? So if we look at, let's jump back over to the internet and look at this, okay, article on Daily Caller, and how Black-owned businesses are bound to take a major hit from the boycott in Georgia. Okay, so roughly 30% of the businesses in Atlanta, Atlanta has a very, very large Black population, and roughly 30% of the businesses in Atlanta are owned by Black individuals. Okay, so, and I think that they're estimating approximately $100 million in revenue that the All-Star game will be bringing into Georgia. So again, what are the values they're speaking of? Again, it's you have to look past what they're saying, and it's always what is the agenda. There's another saying that I had seen. There's a documentary which I'll talk about towards the end of the show, because I'll be doing an interview about it, where it's never about the issue. It's always about the revolution, right? And that's what this is. It's never the issue at hand. It's always about this bigger picture agenda behind things. So now, what's amazing about this is, as this is unfolding, President Trump comes out this weekend. Okay, and I'm going to read this to you. So President Trump released a statement this week. I'm going to read the majority of it. Some of it I can't mention, I can't read, which is absolutely insane, because he talks about the election. And so if I read that to you, which is from our president, YouTube doesn't like that. So what he said: for years, the radical left Democrats have played dirty by boycotting products when anything from that company is done or stated in a way that offends them. Now they're going big time with woke cancel culture in our sacred elections. It is finally time for Republicans and conservatives to fight back. This next line is important. We have more people than they do. Very important. I'll come back to that. Boycott Major League Baseball, CocaCola, Delta Airlines, JP Morgan Chase, Viacom CBS, Citigroup, Cisco, UPS, and Merck. He says, don't go back to their products until they relent. We can play the game better than them. They didn't even get approval of state legislators, which is mandated under the U.S. Constitution. And then he talks about the election, but then he comes back and he says, never submit, never give up. The radical left will destroy our country if we let them. We will not become a socialist nation. Happy Easter. So what an incredible message from President Trump. And well, I'll come back to what this means in a broader perspective after I cover a few more things about the MLB. But fundamentally, I see him as the leader of the free world, and not just America. I think globally, which we'll see with some of the other movements that are happening, like I mentioned, the Make Europe Great Again, which we're going to cover towards the end of the show, that what he's doing, even from where he's at now, as a private citizen, the power that he has to motivate and push forward the power of we the people is incredible. And this gives me, I've had my ups and downs, but this gives me incredible encouragement. I feel like my leader is leading, and he's here, which is just incredible. So I want to talk about quickly, actually take a look at when he says, for instance, boycott Coca-Cola. Okay, I want to pull something up to show you because I would have thought, hey, I don't drink Coca-Cola. I stopped drinking soda a long time ago. But one thing is that these brands, these big companies, they have all these subsidiaries and sub brands. And now Coca-Cola stays primarily in the drink realm. But I want to show you really quickly here just all the different products. So it's, when President Trump says, hey, boycott Coca-Cola, you have to know what they are. So I went straight to Coca-Cola's website and started looking at, okay, what are all the drinks that Coca-Cola owns? Okay. They have, water, smart water. And this was really disappointing for me because I have to admit, and this is my wife and I both, our favorite drinks is Topo Chico, right? I thought it was some artisan Mexican, spring water that we just love. We buy it in bulk. And lo and behold, I found out, which I would have stopped drinking anyway because I don't like Coca-Cola. But again, one of the brands that Coca-Cola owns is Topo Chico. So I've made a note of all these different companies. Even the orange juice that maybe you drink. These are all Coca-Cola brands, right? Because this is the power that we have, and we're going to show them where the money is in this country and how we can, through this coordination, we can affect these changes. Because these aren't just companies that are saying, hey, vote this way. Hey, we're pro Biden, or companies that are donating a certain way politically. That's fine, okay. What this is these are companies, as we've mentioned, that are working in coordination to undermine the integrity of our very country, undermine the integrity of our elections, which really give us what is freedom without free and fair elections, and not ones where they've used these laws are trying to pass to say that, well, if it's truly free, that you should be able to not have an ID and just walk up and drop some scribbled envelope into a mailbox somewhere that counts as voting for the next leader of the free world, which we'll get into that at a different point. So these companies, they're not just getting political. They're actually undermining our entire country. And I see that Angela mentioned in the comments there to print out a list. And actually one thing, I've mentioned our website, which we're getting very close to being able to finish it. And one thing that I want to have on the website is I want to create a list of all the different companies that on both sides of the coin, Mike Lindell with My Pillow, Goya. Some of these companies have come out. UFC, they've come out very strongly in support of conservative values, in support of President Trump. But I also want to make a list of all these companies on the other side that have are trying to undermine our country. And actually, I'll show you. This is something very interesting I discovered. Which just so you know, all these links that I'm showing in this, I'm going to be dropping these into the description box of the video. So on YouTube in the description box, you can go and you can find these. Okay. So this website I found that is the Civic Alliance, and this is a joint statement on protecting voting access. Well, hey, that sounds pretty virtuous, right? Now, so what it is that basically this is a joint participation of all these companies that have come together to say that that they're against these. What they say, our elections are not improved when lawmakers impose barriers that result in longer lines at the polls or that reduce access to secure ballot drop boxes. There are hundreds of bills threatening to make voting more difficult in dozens of states nationwide. We call on elected leaders in every state capital and in Congress to work across the aisle to ensure that every eligible American has the freedom to easily cast their ballot and participate fully in our democracy. Okay. Now, basically, it's we saw what happened on November 3rd. We saw what happened leading up to that with the mail-in voting and everything. So what they're trying to do is, again, they're trying to use the guise of making voting accessible to everyone and making it fair to basically say that we're going to remove all rules and regulations, so you don't even have to have an ID to do this. Yet, if you go to an MLB baseball game and you want to pick up your tickets at roll call, guess what? You got to show ID. Okay. So this, again, this link will be in the description of the video, but here's a list of all these companies that have all come to basically join Coca-Cola and join the MLB in boycotting these elections. You'll recognize a lot of these companies. There's Cisco, which this is a different story, but Cisco worked and continues to work hand in hand with the Chinese Communist Party. And one of the things that they've done is develop tracking technology that has been used in China to track dissidents. So Cisco is a very, very evil company. But Dow Chemical, you've got Etsy, a lot of the online companies, GitHub, H&M. It's been with a very, very strong liberal agenda. That company. I used to work across from one of their big flagship stores in New York City. You get down and Twitter is in here, LinkedIn, Lyft. Of course, there's the MLB, Microsoft. Imagine that with Bill Gates. So this again, I won't go through all these. PayPal, which actually it was funny because I saw someone was sharing a tweet where they were asking PayPal, do I need an ID to open an account? And it was in response to PayPal actually going against the voting ID requirements. And they say, oh yeah, you need to have an ID to open an account. So Junkman, I ask, who are these? These are all companies that have signed a joint letter saying that basically the same way as the MLB, that they oppose the strict voting laws, the racist voting laws that have been enacted in Georgia. So these are all companies that fundamentally are trying to push forward the same voting agenda as HR 1 to make it so that we never have a fair election again in the future. So anyway, Salesforce, Snapchat, Target, there's your Twitter, Uber. It just keeps going. So again, I'll be sharing these. I'll be sharing these links with you so you can look at these. And if there's any companies that you're using, which is what I've done, look at these. Okay, I'm not using you anymore. I'm going to speak with my money. Okay, so I wanted. I've also had different people ask, and they say, look, can we really affect anything? I've seen this come up every 10 years. We're going to boycott this. Does it actually matter? And one thing, again, as Trump said, there are so many of us, right? There are so many of us. And that's why I said they called us before the silent majority, which I didn't really like that. But the thing is, I think that we are the true majority. Not to mention that I think a lot more of the wealth resides in the more, older conservative folks that are saving it. I think a lot of the on the left is a lot more push for the welfare state, a lot more on welfare. So when we want to decide to boycott a company, the power that we have collectively is massive. It's incredible. And for anybody doubting that, I want to pull up one article about the go woke, go broke. This was an article that came out. This was October of last year about, of course, there's your king of wokeness, Mr. LeBron James, who, ironically, he's the one that, especially when things were happening in Hong Kong, that really backpedaled and refused to criticize the Chinese Communist Party. But anyway, so this article was just showing, right, go woke, go broke. This is showing that amidst everything they're doing, that they had steep decline in player salaries and billions of dollars in losses. Okay. So it's real. We have the power to do these things. We really do. Now, one thing that I want to talk about as it relates to the MLB, and again, this is, I think this is so encouraging for me when I see these things happening and you hear them talking about it, it relates to the antitrust, is because I think that it feels like we're so used to just losing, having things stolen from us. And then the media just, gaslights and washes it all over. And we think, oh gosh, I thought this was going to work out this way. And then the corrupt media and everyone just kind of deletes everything and overcomes everything. And then we're left thinking our heads are hanging. So with the MLB, this is very interesting because there's been some politicians that are wanting to go after, they're working on actually drafting something to go after the antitrust exemption that the MLB has. Right, so I'm going to pull up just a quick article here about how the congressman reminds the MLB it still has one big legal protection, but woke boycott of Georgia may have just endangered it. Right, so this is what's very interesting. So Representative Jeff Duncan, okay, a Republican from South Carolina, said Friday that he plans to introduce legislation that will remove MLB's antitrust exemption after Commissioner Rob Manfred announced the Georgia move in response to the passage of State Senate Bill 202. Also, there's been more politicians that have come out and support us. I believe Ted Cruz, a couple others have come out talking about the antitrust. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about what that would mean for the MLB. Okay, so to give a little bit of background, well, first off, I had to do a little research into really fully understanding what antitrust means. So antitrust has nothing to do with I don't trust you, right? Really what it means, it's almost like a trust as in a grouping of businesses working together. Okay, so it's more of an anti-monopoly law. Okay, and it's based upon what was called I think it was the Sherman Act, which was specifically limiting the power of big businesses to monopolize. So in the 20s, before the 20s, the Major League Baseball was one of many different baseball leagues that were all competing. Players are going from league to league. They're, pitting the leagues against each other to get better salaries. It was much more as a true, free agent, free market industry. There was a big lawsuit that happened, and it was actually people thought it was a very bad ruling. But at that time, I think it was in the 20s, the Supreme Court justices granted the MLB exemption from these antitrust laws, basically meaning that the MLB could operate as a monopoly because they basically said that it was a sport. They weren't operating across interstate commerce, which is what the Sherman Act was based upon. They weren't building a business that was moving across state lines actively. So they found these ways of arguing it, right? But so what does that mean for the MLB now if they were to remove the antitrust? So I want to just read a quick paragraph to you because this really highlights how significant this could be. This is an article I found. So I'm going to just read this quickly to you. It says, while it's still in place firmly, let me pull this up so you can see it as well. So they're saying, what is still in place firmly is Major League Baseball's ability to work to thwart competitors, if any ever arise, and its ability to carve out protected geographic territories for its clubs and anti-competitive contract rights for its clubs. For instance, the Rays can't pick up and move to Brooklyn. Jeff Bezos can fund an 8-team upstart league, try to put it in some cities, and Major League Baseball can do all manner of things in concert to stop him that no other businesses could do when faced with competitors. They can agree to set salaries for scouts or other team employees who are not part of a union across the league and make rules against hiring players from one another. It can also dictate the terms of employment of minor league players and institute a draft which prevents teams from separately negotiating with amateur players. It's an enormously powerful tool that any business would kill to have, but which exclusively belongs to baseball. It's a gift, really. So, the point I wanted to make there is that if they remove the antitrust exemption for the MLB because they've done this, that could, especially with right now where Major League Sports, again, going woke, going broke, a lot of people are turning away from Major League Sports. And what do you think is going to happen after people are hearing Trump say that and calling for the boycott? So all these things together could really, really spell a very disastrous period ahead for the MLB. And so I think that something to really ask ourselves in this. I'm personally not a huge baseball fan. I grew up in Ohio watching the Indians never win the World Series, and the Browns, of course, always losing. And like my dad, for instance, who's more conservative and massive baseball fan. Okay, I think the question is that we have to ask ourselves is what is our line, right? Where is our line that we're drawing? Okay, because these are not ordinary times. Right? Our country is under a coordinated attack, and the our future um, is really an unknown right now. There's a lot of very scary potentials that could play out. So I think the question is, where is our line, right? When like I thought, for me, it's like with President Trump, if he says jump, I say how high. Now, of course, I'm going to be rational in analyzing things, and I'm going to still, I still have my own moral values, and fundamentally, I follow God, so that I have to filter things through that. But if he says boycott these companies, I'm boycotting these companies, right? This is how we have to act as patriots wanting to protect the future of our country. So I think that the question for you is, where is your line? Do you love baseball so much that you're like, well, I'll keep watching it, and maybe I won't go to that game? Well, okay, we're still giving money to these people then. Um, I know for me, one of the hard ones is Amazon. I use Amazon often. I have a lot of things on, auto delivery, and it's just that's a very difficult one. But I know that they're a very evil corporation, so I really want to remove them. So I think that part of this again is asking um, where our lines are at, and just seeing. For me, one of my lines, firm lines, is the Second Amendment. And I'm going to do more episodes on the Second Amendment, which I believe is extremely important, and it's very important for us to understand. But to me, that's a line that I will not allow to be crossed. So I have my lines. But I want to talk about, on a more positive note, as we're kind of wrapping up the show, um, what some people around the world that are doing to draw their lines and speaking out and no longer passively enduring when their rights are being trampled on. So I mentioned in the beginning a Polish pastor, and this I'm going to play this video clip. It's about 2 minutes. You might want to turn your volume down. It's a lot of yelling, but this to me is so inspiring. I believe that what's happened with the lockdowns and a lot of this stuff has been complete overreach by the government, especially with churches shutting down. And it's a whole different story to talk about how churches have reacted to these things, and whether those in charge of the churches are complying and saying, okay, hey, we're going to shut down our house of worship because the government said so. To me, that's the first place I'd be running out of, and I'd be finding a new church. But I want to play this for you because this to me is very inspiring. And again, so this is a Polish pastor, and who's someone who probably his grandparents lived through the uh, extreme, the true tyranny and the true fascism of the Nazis. And listen to this. So this is incredible. I'm going to play this for you.
Please get out. Get out of this property. Immediately get out. Okay. Get out of this property immediately. Out. I don't want to hear anything. Out of this property immediately. I don't want to hear a word. Out. Out. Out of this property immediately until you come back with a warrant. Out. 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 Out of this property. Immediately out. Immediately go out and don't come back. I don't want to talk to you. Not a word. Out of this property. Immediately out. I don't care what you have to say. Out. Out. Out of this property, you Nazis. Out. Out. Gestapo is not allowed here. Immediately, Gestapo is not allowed. Out! Do you understand English? Get out of this property. Go. So go. Go. And don't come back without the warrant. Out, Nazi. Out. Out. You understand? Nazis are not welcome here. Out. And don't come back without the warrant. Do not come back without the warrant. You understand that? You're not welcome here. Nazis are not welcome here. Gestapo is not welcome here. Do not come back, you Nazi psychopaths. Unbelievable, sick, evil people. Intimidating people in a church during the Passover. You Gestapo, Nazi, communists, fascists. Don't you dare coming back here. Can you imagine those psychopaths? Passover, the holiest Christian festival in a year, and they're coming to intimidate Christians during the holiest festival? Unbelievable. What is wrong with those sick psychopaths? It's beyond me.
I couldn't help from having a big grin on my face watching that. I see Yabby asking where this is. I believe that was in Canada, perhaps in Calgary, Canada. But it was at a Polish church that was on during their Passover celebration that the police came in. And again, that to me is an example of standing up against tyranny. And this is, I think that people that have experienced it, I know a lot of Chinese that have come out of communist China, and they know exactly what it's like, and they can see the signs, and they are the ones that are adamant. They're not going to be following these orders that cross over into tyranny. So that was fantastic. That was such a good video, but also a good example. And I think it's also a good question. And this is something that I'd like to talk about in Thursday's show a little bit. But the churches around the world since the 20s have been targeted for infiltration and subversion by the communists. And so there are a lot of churches that the seminaries, the religious schools, and across multiple relationships that the communists have infiltrated and gained control over. So I think that one thing is to ask yourself with your local church, how is your pastor responding to these? I saw one picture that was showing a church, and it said, okay, this side is for unvaccinated people, and this side is for vaccinated people. And I saw that. It's like, if I walked in and I saw that, I'd probably tip something over, but I would not walk back in there. Because I think fundamentally, when any kind of government tries to shut down a house of worship, especially while they're allowing places like strip clubs and these other places to stay open, to me, that's a sign of the end times, really. But seeing how people react to that will tell me a lot about who I'm going to be listening to. So now, another video I'm going to show you, and this is the last clip as we're getting towards the end of the show. Again, this is a little different example of somebody speaking out. Okay, so this happened recently. I know that you're probably familiar with Charles Barkley, who I think at one point was up there with Michael Jordan. Being close to, he'd reached that fame of being. He was doing acting and so much more than just basketball. Became very successful. But this is a clip of him live on a television show on CBS, and this is what he said. It's only about a minute. What he says is so encouraging to see people speaking out. It's so encouraging. And this to me inspires me to stand up even more. So I'm going to pull up this video. Again, it's only about a minute, but this is such a great video. And I really have a lot of respect for Charles Barkley for speaking like this.
Man, I think most white people and black people are great people. I really believe that in my heart. But I think our system is set up where our politicians, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, are designed to make us not like each other so they can keep their grasp of money and power. They divide and conquer. I truly believe in my heart most white people and black people are awesome people. But we're so stupid following our politicians, whether they're Republicans or Democrats. And their only job is, hey, let's make these people not like each other. We don't live in their neighborhoods. We all got money. Let's make the whites and blacks not like each other. Let's make rich people and poor people not like each other. Let's scramble the middle class. I truly believe that in my heart.
Yeah, I think he's absolutely right.
Again, just an amazing example of someone speaking out. And I think that we're going to see more and more of this. As I've mentioned, I think that President Trump is going to play a stronger and stronger role from where he's at, because ultimately who's really in charge of the country? It's we the people. The greatest thing that they've done is they've convinced us that we're not actually in control of our own country. The Constitution was written, the Bill of Rights written to make sure that power stayed in the hands of we the people. And we have the Second Amendment to make sure that if the government crosses those lines, that the balance of power is corrected, to put it kind of softly. So now I'm going to finish out with one last article I'm going to show you, which I think this is just incredible. This just makes me so happy. Okay, so this is an article. Okay, Italy, Hungary, and Poland create new Patriotic Alliance to make Europe great again. It's excellent. I'm going to pop down here and read. It says, the leaders who are doing this are former Italian prime minister, Hungary's prime minister, Poland's prime minister, and they discussed this right-wing political alliance based on Christian values that they're setting up. And it says their impact on the European Union is substantial as combined. They hold 64 seats in the European Parliament in Brussels, and really the single most influential and powerful party bloc in this institution. Basically, they organized the alliance's profile in a statement, basically saying that the goal is to build a European democratic right that offers a home to European citizens who do not want migrants or who do not want multiculturalism, who have not descended into the LGBTQ lunacy. And he added that it's for people who defend Europe's Christian traditions, who respect the sovereignty of nations, and who see their nations as part of their past, not as part of their past, but as part of their future. So this is incredible, because this is what's also been really encouraging, is that there's so many people that watch this show from around the world. And again, it's like when I talk about Trump, as I see it, is not the leader of America or the people of America. I see Trump as being the leader of the free world, of the people around the world that are sick of the corrupt governments and the tyranny, the overreach that especially we've seen in the past year, and then all this insanity. Trump is the person that I think will continue to bring people together and continue to embolden us and to help guide us all and help us all kind of find the strength within ourselves to push forward. So, and going back to his message, this is such an important thing. We have more people than they do. We just have to stand our ground and have faith. Because our founding fathers were up against much worse odds when they fought the battle to create this country. All right, last bit. On Thursday at noon, I have a very special interview. The topic is going to be called How to Save America. And I'm interviewing Curtis Bowers, probably the single person who's influenced me the most as it relates to understanding the communist infiltration into our country. If you're not familiar with Curtis, he's produced two incredible documentaries called Agenda. The first one is Agenda Grinding America Down, and the second is Agenda Masters of Deceit. So I've talked about this before. I'll put the links in the description to this, but again, Thursday at noon, we're going to be sitting down talking about how to save America and what we can do as we the people. If you haven't, please subscribe, hit the like button. I think I forgot to tell you guys that during this video, but hit the like button, guys and girls. I'm sorry about that. Hit the like button, share the video, and I can't wait to see you all back on Thursday. I feel positive. I really do. So, God, again, thank you. God bless Donald Trump. Actually, I will ask you quickly before I hop off. Does anybody have any questions? Almost forgot to ask if there's any questions. Kathy, yes, those are very powerful documentaries. Yes. Again, Agenda, they're on, you can find them online. If you search for Agenda documentary, and I'll put, like I said, I'll put the links in the description box. Very, very good documentaries exposing the communist subversion in America. Rawlings, we are all God's children. We need to stick together. Absolutely, we do. Yeah, I remember there's a song I sang in Sunday school. I think it was like, Jesus loves the little children. So I think it's about how does it matter if you're black or white, and how they're all the same in his eyes, right? That's so true. That's so true. Henry John, they're dividing this country in so many ways, and they want to do away with Christians and the church. The people in power are not legal and sold out America to China why they wanted it so bad. I agree. I know we have to correct that. I think the most important thing we can do, and this is something that the Agenda documentaries talk about really significantly, is that they are trying to undermine the Christian values. The communists know that's the only way they can bring our country to its knees, is by undermining the Judeo-Christian values our country was built upon. So we have to be able to strengthen those values, which will ultimately strengthen us from in fighting the communists, which ultimately I think is strengthening us in the fight against Satan. Okay. All right. Okay, so I'm going to sign off for now. I'll see you all on Thursday. Thank you again so much for joining. I can't wait to see you Thursday. I can't wait for the interview. Just keep staying strong out there. God bless. Thank you.